For those of you that are unfamiliar with this guy's called Tommy.
You love that, don't you? You love it.
And everyone calls you Tommy now.
Even my neighbours.
No, but everyone on the channel is like, bring Tommy back. I'm here with Tommy. I wanted to have a conversation about debunking some of the myths surrounding the driving test.
Debunking, I like that.
Yeah, debunking. Not what you used to do when you were at school. I've just jumped online here. Common driving test myths.
Okay.
And some of these actually, well, hopefully a lot of them will be something you've thought about. Maybe from you. Have any of your pupils ever sort of said anything to you about the driving test, about what they think they should be doing?
Do you know what? I've had women say a woman examiner is more likely to fail you.
Do you think there's any truth in that?
I don't know, not at all. I always say if you fail, you failed for a reason. There's going to be a driver fault that you've done that's caused you to fail. They're not just going to turn up and think, right, today she's failing, second one's failing, third one's failing.
Can I tell you a story?
Of course you can. I love your stories.
It's exactly on this, actually.
Yeah.
This is a while ago. So there was an examiner. Shall I even say where it was?
No.
Should I say? So there was an examiner. This is a long time ago. This is quite a few years ago. And I had some female pupils that were going to test, and they would come out of the test and they would say stuff to me like, she was horrible, she was really nasty. And I was exactly like you, going, what? I mean, nah, I'm sure it's not like that. Anyway, cutting a really long story short, because I don't know all the details, but about a few months later, it became a bit of a gossip that there was an issue with women. It was only with women. It turned out that she wouldn't pass women.
Seriously?
That is a one-off case. But you're going to get bad eggs. You're going to get bad eggs across the board, aren't you?
Anyway, yeah, of course.
But it's definitely not the norm, is it?
No. I wouldn't say it's a fact women are going to fail you more than a man would. I just generally feel like it's down to your own drive. It's in your hands.
So what have you got to do? If you're worried about stuff like that, now I know I've just told that story, which is probably just going to filter in and actually create problems. This is a one-off. It must be seen as a one-off. What should they be really thinking about? Confidence
is, I feel, is really important, because if you go in and straight away you're feeling nervous, that's going to come out in your drive. And whoever sat in this seat, I'm just going to show them I know how to drive. Instructors, we wouldn't be bringing you to a test if we genuinely didn't think you could pass.
Are they expecting the same level of driving ability that, say, for example, if you were to turn up?
No, definitely not. They don't expect a perfect drive. They expect some faults. I don't know why I looked at it.
That naked man that just went by. You're not expected to drive like an experienced driver. Right, so if you think about like your Part 2 test, when you're going to your Part 2 test,
yeah,
the examiner specifically says to you, this is I think the language that he used to you was slightly outdated, but he said this is like big boy test, isn't it? This is like, you know, and again, that's not really appropriate language, but they expect to see a high level drive because you're an experienced driver and obviously you've trained for it as well.
Yeah.
But whereas if you're a learner driver, you don't have to go in, like you shouldn't be trying to take those gaps in traffic that maybe you might see an experienced driver do. And when I say an experienced driver, I don't mean someone like your mum or your dad who's gone out and is just sort of nipping across traffic and actually doing it wrong. I'm talking about taking those gaps which are maybe like 1 second, but it's correct. You can make it. You don't have to do that. What would you suggest they do if they're coming up to junctions and it's like a 1 second gap?
If you don't know, if you feel like there's a possibility of slowing cars down, if you don't know, don't go. There's no rush to get out of these junctions.
If you don't know, you don't go. Sing it with me. If you don't know, you don't go.
Oh my gosh.
I love it. I think I think it should be a mantra. Number one reason why people fail their driving tests is observations at junctions, right? And if you are taking unnecessary risks at junctions, that's just not going to help out. So, female examiners failing females, I would say that's a myth. You're obviously going to find the odd bad egg here and there. It is possible. And if you have any doubts about any of the examiners that you've dealt with at a driving test centre, there is a complaints form. You can complain directly to the Dvsa. It will not change your result, but the examiner will get examined. They will look into it. And this is ultimately what happened to this particular examiner, and she's no longer an examiner.
What else is on the list?
Are there driving test pass quotas? The myth is that there is a quota about how many people can pass in a period of time, and once they've hit that quota...
That's definitely a myth.
Can we possibly explain actually what's going on there?
It's got to be a myth. So what, if the first week of the month, they have excellent drivers and everyone's passing, and then they hit that quota, so then what, the next 3 weeks no one's allowed to pass? That's got to be a myth.
It is a myth. It is a myth. It has to be debunked. We're going to have to get rid of it, because ultimately, if you can drive, you deserve to pass. I think where this comes from is we live in a data-driven world, don't we? So at a particular test centre, let's say that test centre, and we're actually at Barnet here today, I looked it up, the test centre pass rate at Barnet presently, if it's up to date, is 46.5%. Now let's say you're an examiner and you are coming in at 35% over a period of time. What's going to happen is that's going to flag up on the system, and then another examiner, the senior examiner, is going to come down and just make sure that everything is like, have you understood your job properly? Are you failing people for the wrong reasons, or whatever it is, right? So they will come in and check it. And likewise, if your pass rate is 55%, 60% over a sustained period of time, then they will come in and they will also like, what's going on? We need to have a look at, and so they'll come in and sit at the back of the car. So that does happen. And I would hope that doesn't reflect on the performance of an examiner in certain particular situations. But I think that's why there is this myth. That's got you thinking there for a second, isn't it?
Yeah, you just never know. You never know.
It's definitely a myth. The ball is in your court. If you go out and make sure that you're driving to a really high standard, as high as you possibly can as a learner driver, you'll pass the test, mate.
Yeah, definitely. If you're safe and you know what you're doing, you follow the rules of the road.
Learners automatically fail if they stall.
Definitely a myth. There's no way that is true. If you stall, do you recover? Are you putting yourself in any danger?
Beginning of your test, you're moving off. The examiner says drive on when you're ready. So you do everything right. You stick it in gear 1. You do all your observations around the car. I go to move off and I stall.
Yeah.
Yeah?
And give the examiner whiplash.
I really didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do it. Right. But have I impacted anyone here?
No, at the moment you haven't.
I haven't, right? So if I can remain in control, so the first thing I'm doing, I'm making sure the car's not rolling. I quickly get the engine back running. Now my car's great, put the clutch down and it just starts. So the engine's back on again, so you can be quite rapid. If it's obviously a car that you need to redo a manual start, then that's a different story. Then the examiner says, the examiner's like probably not going to say, please drive off again when it's safe to do so. What's created the stall in the first place is what do you reckon I did there?
Well, the gear was correct, so it was how quick you came off of the clutch. The second time now, you've really got to be wary of, I've got to lift my clutch slower this time.
Slowly. So I do my observations around the car. I put the handbrake on so I'm good, so I don't need my foot brake. I put my signal on, and then as I bring the clutch up nice and slowly, and then I'm going to hold it. It's like, lock it in? Did you say that?
I say pause.
Pause, yeah.
Once you get a little bit of movement, pause.
And then you move off again. Now, would that go down as a fault?
The first stall?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel definitely a fault, but it's not serious. You haven't failed your test.
Nah.
You probably ain't started on the best foot, but... It's oh my god, I got 30 minutes of this.
And you're probably panicking. You're probably completely panicking. But the thing is, at that moment, it's not over. I'm not going to stall here. But this is the kind of junction here. If I'm turning right and I've got traffic coming from the right-hand side and traffic coming from the left-hand side, and I go out into that junction there and I stall, that could be a problem, because if I have an impact on any of this vehicle, I'm going to say it's over. Learners automatically fail if they cross their hands when turning the steering wheel. Do we even need to talk about this one?
Definitely not.
Just in case, because there could be new learners that are coming in and they've been taught they have to use pull and push. Which is the recommended method for steering?
So the recommended way to steer would be push and pull technique.
And why is it the recommended method?
Both hands on the wheel, you've got good control of the steering wheel as well.
Control. What also are you not covering?
You're not covering your airbag in case that went off.
So that's the recommended method. But what does the examiner care about most?
That you've got control of your vehicle.
Okay, so yes, you can cross your hands. It's easier. Okay, this is a good one. It's easier for learners to pass their driving tests at certain times.
It depends.
Why is that even in debunking a myth as a myth? Okay, go on.
It depends, because look, if you're in rush hour traffic, chances are you're not going to do a lot of complex junctions where they know traffic will build up. So they'll sort of avoid those really big, like apex for instance. It can take 10 minutes to get just to the apex, and then to get on, you can avoid those sort of areas. If you go and it's totally quiet, everyone's at work, then you could be dealing with loads of complex junctions because you're one of the only cars. So you just, I don't know. I don't think it's a fact that you'd pass.
So tell me what you're saying. Are you saying it's easier for learners to pass their driving test at certain times of the day or not? You're on the fence on this one.
I am, because I feel like it depends on your sort of style of driving.
I think it comes down to how confident you are as a driver, right? So not everybody's going to be really confident going for their driver test, are they? I mean, like really super confident and really good control of the car. I personally do think the time of day has an impact on, and again, depending on who you are, as you just said, as a driver. Doing a test early in the morning, I think is, you do it because, well, it's probably because it's the only slot you can get, to be honest.
Nowadays, yeah.
So if we talk about Hendon, like areas that we know, Hendon, Watford probably as well, you're not going to be doing the majorly complex junctions because they're too busy. But every junction you come to, you're going to be busy.
Yeah.
Like just getting out of the test centre to turn right or turn left, and you've got peak rush hour traffic coming out of Mill Hill, turning right.
Yeah.
At 8 o'clock in the morning, 8:30 in the morning. That's hell. I would actually say I would rather have every test route open to me and do it at a non-peak time. So any of the large junctions they come up, then take somebody who's inexperienced and having to deal with that kind of rush hour traffic. However, if you've been learning to drive in rush hour traffic and you're happy with it, then it's totally fine. But if you're going to do your test early in the morning, you've got to be good at dealing with heavy traffic. I would like to see the data on how many people fail their test for observations at junctions in the peak times. Because they say it's the number one reason, right?
Yeah. Would be interesting.
People are going to probably do observations at junctions in other times of the day as well. But I would suggest that observations at junctions, every junction, imagine you're there like a minute, 2 minutes trying to get out of a junction. What's the likelihood you're gonna
want to take a chance on a little gap that's not actually there? Yeah, definitely.
So I reckon I don't think that's a myth. I actually think that's a good talking point. I think you should think about time of day. Talk with your driving instructor about your ability. If you're going to do your test early in the morning, make sure you're doing lessons in peak times, because if you're not used to it, it's difficult. And if you're going to do it outside of peak times, make sure that you can do all the junctions you could possibly face. Okay, this is a good one. Learners need to exaggerate moving their head when looking at mirrors.
I've seen this before. End of the road, turn right. I'm like, is your neck all right?
Are they doing that for you, or are they doing that for the examiner?
They just do it for the examiner. I don't know why. I've sat on the back of tests. I've done lessons. Then I've sat on back of tests. And when they ask whatever route direction they're given, and I see the way they're moving their head, I find it hilarious.
Is that the most important thing, that they can see you looking in your mirrors?
Whether you're exaggerating or not, is have you seen what's going on in those mirrors? So if I just glance with my eyes and I know no one's there, you're safe, you're driving safe. I don't have to spin my whole head around to check that mirror.
I want to turn left here, it's exaggerating. I think the examiner would see that I check my mirrors there. Yeah?
Just about to say good mirror check, well done.
But that in itself, for me, actually, and I'm an experienced driver, that felt like a bit of a distraction for me that I'm doing that. Like making sure that the examiner can see, because I'm not actually looking where I'm going anymore, which is quite dangerous. So I would suggest that you don't do that. Don't exaggerate your movements, just be aware. Mirrors for change of speed. Can we use this as an example?
Go on.
Yeah, driving down a road, right? Your pupil checks the mirrors.
Yeah.
They see the car behind. You're approaching a stale green traffic light. What do I mean by stale green traffic light?
Has that been on?
Do you use that?
I've never used it. No.
You never use it?
Was it like it's been green for a while?
It's been green for a while, right? So that light's been green for a while. You've seen it. It's been green for a while.
Yeah.
You are the examiner instructor on a mock test or on a real test, and you're thinking, what's that light going to do?
Yeah, I'm thinking, okay, that light might change.
So what would you be expecting? They've checked their mirrors. They've seen a vehicle quite close behind them.
Okay.
What would you be expecting them to do?
Reduce the speed a little bit.
Now, let's say they've checked their mirrors, but they're not reducing their speed. The lights turn and they brake really hard because they got to stop. They don't obviously have a collision. Car doesn't go into the back of them, but it's close. Yes? Where does that fault get marked?
It's got to be use of mirrors, no?
Use of mirrors, change of speed. It still goes under. It doesn't make a blind bit of difference whether you've checked the mirrors or not.
Yeah.
What matters is that you've taken action depending on what you've seen. So I can be doing something, but if I'm not interpreting it properly, I'm still making a mistake, aren't I? And I always think, whenever I get into a car, it could be anything, it could be an Uber driver, it could be whatever. If I see that they're really aware of the way they drive, I'm good. I don't care.
put me at the back. I hate being a passenger.
If they're really aware, it's the ones you get into a car and they're not aware and they're just swerving all over the place. You're like, oh my God. Awareness, and then action surrounding your awareness. I think it's really important. Don't be thinking that you're just going to be doing all this in there. You're going to pass that. It's just not going to happen, is it? Unless you're aware of what's going on. So if you're struggling with your steering, and that is something that obviously we haven't covered in this particular video, and you want a little bit more information on that, then go and watch this video next. In the meantime,
what was that face?
Stay sunny, San Diego. What's that?
I bring out the fool in you, don't I?
What? Stay safe, San Diego. What is that from? Anchorman. Have you not seen Anchorman? Get well out. Get well out.
There you go.
It's going. We're going. Get well out. See you next time.